purpose of Freethought Forum is to be vigilant to the encroachment of religion into government and to educate the general public as to what a freethinker is.
My thoughts give me power.
No scholar can map them.
No hunter can trap them. No person can deny. Die Gedanken sind frei. No person.
Good evening. This is Freethought Forum. I'm Howard Thompson, editor of the Texas Atheist newsletter. I'm your host for this segment of Freethought Forum. Our guests today are Layla Zamora of the San Antonio College Freethinkers and Jacob Alexander of the Freethinkers Association of Central Texas. And our topic is Young Freethinkers. But before we talk with them, I'd like to give you a little bit of information. On the broad camera, you'll be able to see a board over my shoulder that has a phone number and an email address. The email address is my address. You can contact me that way. The phone number will put you into contact with the Freethinkers Association of Central Texas here in San Antonio, the Texas Hill Country Freethinkers out in the Bernie area, and the San Antonio College Freethinkers group. If you just call that number, somebody can get you into contact with those groups. The Freethinkers Association of Central Texas meets weekly every Tuesday at 6:30 at the Clippership Bookstore, and that's at the corner of Babcock and Balcones Heights. So there's a regular weekly meeting, discussion session going on where you can meet other freethinkers, other people who have different ideas than the orthodox views of religion, and discuss a lot of topics. My guests, as I said earlier, are Layla Zamora from San Antonio College, and Jacob Alexander from the Freethinkers Association of Central Texas. And I guess I would like to start by asking Layla a little bit to tell me about the Freethinkers group at San Antonio College. I've heard about it, but so far I have no information except that it exists, and there are a few members' names that I've heard of, and you're one of them.
Thank you. They started back in the fall of last year. I first started going because they advertised it in our newspaper, The Ranger, and it's fairly new. Don Lawrence, which is the president of FACT, is our speaker, and we have a sponsor who is a philosophy professor at San Antonio College. His name is Dr. Schoenig, and it's just a really interesting, it's a very interesting group. We talk about what is secularism in our country and religion, and why people believe the things that they do, and why we have those doubts and things like that.
Do you all meet weekly during the semester?
We do. As of yet, we're not really certain when we're going to be meeting, but we do meet weekly. The last thing I did was I had checked up on the Atheist Alliance website, and I noticed that it said that our Freethinkers group on campus still meets on Fridays at noon, which is when we were meeting last semester. So, but I went to check last week, but it was like 3 o'clock and there was nobody there. Sometimes they run kind of long, so I was hoping that they'd still be there, but they weren't. Okay.
And my understanding is that when you all began the group on campus last fall, there was a little bit of a reaction among some people on campus at the idea that, I don't know whether it was the idea that people might think freely about religion or religion in general.
Oh, we did have, we had a negative reaction. There's about three Christian groups on campus. They're like the Student Methodist Center, the Catholic Student Center, and another one I can't think of. No, the Church of Christ. And several, we suspect, at least I suspect, that some people that are either involved with them or people that are very like Christian fundamentalists got really offended by our flyers that said, well, why would you believe in the fairy and the tooth fairy? Why would you believe in like Santa Claus and all this stuff? And then we said, it's okay to like not believe in all those things. And then at the end it said, it's okay not to believe in God. And so I suppose a lot of people got offended because oftentimes those flyers, we'd find out that they were missing. And our sponsor, Dr. Schoenig, said that he put that flyer up in front of his door, and every day somebody would tear it down. Every day somebody was like seriously bothered by it. And I thought it was kind of funny that they would tear it down, if they were so convinced that their convictions were correct, why they had to feel that they had to tear it down. So that's one of the things that we talked about.
Well, It sounds like you all are in the long tradition of free thinking in Texas in particular, where people with religious beliefs just didn't like people to think freely, especially if they were going to think freely about God. Our other guest is Jacob Alexander, and he's been going to the Freethinkers Association of Central Texas meetings at the Clippership Bookstore. And I'd like to ask Jason, from his viewpoint as a younger person going to these groups, there's a wide age range there, but as a younger person going to the group, how an experience of going and being around other freethinkers strikes him, and what he thinks of this.
Very, very interesting, as opposed to spending time in the real world. I don't know what you call it, because the real world is out there and kind of shaded about the way things really are. It's nice to be able to spend some time around people that share the same views, even though some of them are kind of sketchy, and I think might feel a little insecure about being a free thinker in a religious world. But it's nice to know that there are people out there that just couldn't really care less about all the religion and just want to cut through the lines of I don't know how you say it in a nice way, things other than being rational. I don't know, as far as thought goes, and just being able to see that what's out there isn't the way it is. You know, the mainstream American perception of the world and what drives it is not the way it seems on the big picture, and on a small scale, people do understand and know how things really are. You know, how else do you say it?
One of the things I've noticed is an editor of a statewide newsletter. I get a lot of emails and try to communicate around the state and keep up with what's happening with the groups. Is that there are an awful lot of younger people becoming involved. And we do see some generational differences between those who are in their 20s and those who are in their 50s, and then those who are in their 70s or older, which is kind of an evolution of perhaps maybe feeling like you have a little bit more opportunity to think freely and reject believing in God or religion or however you're approaching it, questioning it. There's, for example, an atheist and agnostic student group at Texas A&M that's been in existence for at least 7 years that I know of. There's a Freethinkers group at the University of Houston. There's two skeptics group up in the Dallas area. There's a group trying to form again at the University of Texas. So the young people's involvement is increasing. And one of the reasons I think it's increasing is because of kind of a rising a fervor maybe for conservative Christianity in our society that gets particularly strong in a state like Texas, and a lot more young people are running into other students when they're in junior high and high school, sort of being in their face about believing in God and participating, and you're a bad person if you don't, and getting a lot of social and peer pressure. And I think some of it may be kind of a reaction. Layla, how would you describe how you sort of became interested in this, and if you had a religious background, kind of what it was, and how you kind of made a transition?
Sure. Well, one of the reasons I'm very attracted to the being a free thinker is the fact that so many religions they seem to have like anti-women sentiment, and I've always been kind of a feminist, even as a child. I was real like aggressive and kind of bold, and there's a lot of people that have a problem with that, and religious organizations are among those people, and so I was like, I definitely cannot have this. I definitely cannot, pretend to be someone that I'm not just to please everybody else. I was raised Catholic, like most people in Texas, or at least the Hispanic community, but my parents didn't raise us Orthodox either. And my mother's actually very different. She's very like lenient. She's not dogmatic like a lot of people would be. They seem to be accepting. Perhaps they don't like it too much, but at least they're not in my face about, well, what you're doing is wrong, and you need to go to church with us, and stuff like that. Various reasons. That's one of the biggest reasons why I'm attracted to being a free thinker.
So when Paul says that women should be silent in church, you think that that's probably not a suitable thing that you can put up with.
Yeah, exactly.
Jacob, yeah.
Same question?
Yeah, same question.
thing. Well, gosh, I was raised just as religious as you can be, and it was more, I went along with it and I did it, and I was an officer in the Fellowship of Christian Athletes in the high school, and it just the whole time, I can't say when I changed, because there was never anything there. The whole time that I was supposed to be believing in anything, there was nothing that I felt like I was believing in, and I feel that most religionists out there, that unless they're special religionists and they get some sort of good feeling inside from believing in something they have no concept of or no idea what it really is, they're just not true religionists. So what else is there but absolute non-theism? There's nothing there to believe in. And even though I bought into it, and people ask me, oh, what do you think this? What do you think about this? And I always had an answer, and I would always talk and debate. And I went to a Christian university, actually. My first year of college was at the University of Mary Hardin Baylor in Belton.
Yeah.
And I spent tons and tons of hours talking to people about religion and just preaching to each other, That's all we did. And it just worked its way through until finally I said, I feel absolutely nothing. There's nothing to be believing in. And that's it. And just one day I just decided it's atheism. That's it. Simply.
So the Holy Spirit never just came on you and let you speak in tongues or prophesy?
I can see people doing it, and I'm, what is it? What is it that's getting them that's not getting me? Am I a bad religionist? Am I not doing it right? Am I not believing enough? No, never. No.
How does this affect your family relationships?
Oh, heavens to Betsy to ask that question. I tell you what, it's not something that any of them could even take and swallow, and it must be the way people deal with it across the board. Whenever they're talking to people that are diehard religionists and have been their entire lives, that's it. There's no God. There never has been. And what you're believing in, there's basically nothing. They just know. They thought I was crazy. I tell you what, for a small time, they thought I was crazy, and they still think I do. And you just need to start believing again. And your sister used to think like that. Well, she had good reason. She had a real good reason. But that's where the family, that's what they think about it. They're not too excited, not too excitable. Oh well.
Well, you all talk about a little bit different family kind of experience, and from the young people I talk to, and the older people that matter, who describe kind of the equivalent of an atheist coming out of the closet, or non-theist or agnostic or whatever, or whatever they kind of choose as an identity. That the family connection is in many ways the big one, especially if it's around holidays. A holiday when you haven't quite let your family know yet, but that you don't believe in this stuff is kind of a hard one for some people. Was there for you all an instance or a moment when you sort of made the decision, I'm going to tell my family, or did they sort of accidentally find out, by your attitude, or how did that happen, Layla?
For me, it was before the holidays. It was like last fall, because that's when I first got interested in this, because that's when they started the group on campus. I forget what my father said. He said something, and I said, well, you know what, Dad, maybe there is no God. And it was so funny, because he was like, how could you say that? And he's not Catholic himself, but he's Christian in his own way. My house is so weird. And I don't know, I think that kind of upset him, but it was really funny. And ever since then, I don't know, I think my family likes to make fun of me sometimes, and it's kind of weird. And then, but Christmas was a bit different, because I never really put too much thought about religion when it came to Christmas time. But then just last year, I was like, I was thinking about the fact that I'm not really, I wasn't into the holiday itself as a Christian religion. It was more like a family get-together or something, and it was kind of overwhelming. I didn't really know what to do, but I didn't want to be like the outcast.
Yeah.
Well, it was a little bit different than that for me. I certainly didn't wait. As soon as I decided, the first time I had a conversation with anybody, I think it was my little sister, I said, you know what, Sharon, I don't believe in God anymore. And she said, what? I said, I don't believe in God anymore. There's nothing there to believe in. I said, what do you believe in exactly? She just couldn't answer, She just had no answer. And my brothers, I had my little brother, I think he's he's leading towards non-theism, towards atheism. He's leaning there, and I had something to say about it, and it was just so firm and definite. I said, "That's it, man. There's nothing there. There's nothing to believe in. There's nothing existential. There's nothing outside of us." And people that do believe in that, they don't understand. They just the miseducation, lack of education. Well, I just can't believe it because you're saying it. You know, it's one of those things. Just because you believe it, I can't believe it. So there was a little of that. Sibling deal there, and as far as my other brother goes, he just it's bad when you talk to him about it. I told him, and just throwing the Bible in my face, just how can you refute this? This is the word. I said, well, if you choose to believe in a book that someone else says is the law, there you go. You can argue that all day and all night, but you got to see through that, and you got to really go past it. And then as far as aunts and uncles and extended family go, they just kind of okay, you're going to believe what you're going to believe. You're kind of, so that's how it's been with my family.
Well, are there other family members in your all's families that basically reject religion and kind of take a non-theistic, agnostic, atheist, whatever stance? Or are you all the first?
I think I could possibly be the first.
In your family?
Both sides of my family have always been extremely religious, extreme religionists. I mean, I come from the worst. It's 22 some odd years of spoon-fed religionism, and finally I just kicked it aside, and now they're all religions. Every single one of them on both sides. I know I'm the first. My little brother, hopefully he'll be the second, but he's still kind of sketchy. He's not sure. I'll make him sure, hopefully sometime soon.
Well, you all are kind of pioneers for your family. It's kind of hard for you all to go through, perhaps, and makes you worry about your family relationships and maybe losing some family contacts or weakening them as time goes by, and people realize that this is really how you are. But if nothing else, maybe for you all's families, you're setting an example that says, well, you can choose something different if that really comes to you. You don't have to go along with everybody else if it feels wrong for you.
Oh yeah, no question about that.
Well, that sounds generally very similar to other kinds of stories I've heard, and I find it interesting listening to the two of you. There does seem to be a difference between how men and women approach it. Men tend to be a little more abrupt, in many cases, on average, though there's a lot of overlap, and I think the women are a little bit more concerned up front about how this is going to affect all their family relationships. But to what extent would you all say that as you were, let's say, in your mid to late teen years, and your brain's developed all its full adult functions, and it doesn't know everything, but it can do all of the analytic reasoning functions. How much did reasoning about this, consciously or subconsciously play a role in what you've stepped out to?
Well, I don't think I put too much thought into it when I was a teenager, but I definitely was never very religious. It was really strange. Actually, I used to go to catechism classes because I've even been confirmed. It's really funny. But I went, and my teacher was like, "Oh, Layla, you made my year worthwhile. You're a really good student." But I think it was because I wasn't looking at it, going to catechism classes as it's something I have to do, and it's like religion. Yeah. I don't know, I thought of it more like education, I guess, although it's like ignorant education. I don't know, I didn't think much of it, and I wasn't like, regard religion very highly, and things like that. I don't think I put too much thought into it when I was in high school, but like I said, I wasn't very religiously devout or anything either.
I just, in terms of things like, one of the common questions that a lot of young people get to is when they start thinking, well, where did God come from? Or, gosh, can people really rise from the dead? Is that, did you think about that sort of thing?
I think I probably did doubt it. It didn't make sense to me, but I also feel like for the longest time I was really ignorant, and so I hate to admit to that, but at least I'm trying to break away from that. It feels like that's what Texas is like sometimes, though.
One of the best things a person can do often is recognize when they don't have information about something. It's a very humbling experience, but it certainly sets the stage for you to go on to something a little better. Jason, your experience?
It was like falling lemmings off a cliff. I mean, the whole time I was in high school, the whole time I was in the first couple years of college, when I was a teenager, I was preaching it, I mean, and there just weren't a whole lot of atheists or even agnostics to preach to, so you're preaching to people that, believe or have this and that thought about it, and all it ever boiled down to was an issue of faith, because there's really no proof, and I knew that, but I had faith. And everybody else that I talked to about it, they had to have faith too. So I made the case for religion forever, and I kept making that case and kept making that case, and it just never ever became any more clear to me as it did anybody I tried to make the case to. And then I took a philosophy course in Austin, actually. I took a philosophy course at the Austin Community College, and one of the professors there, Matthew Doughty, and he's a really smart man. He's an organist at a Lutheran church, but you could easily tell that he was absolutely not theistic at all. And he taught all the old philosophers and their ideologies about it. And he said you could just stop at the level everybody goes to beyond what happens here. Just not go to the prime mover, the Yahweh or the Allah or something else having started everything other than just it being born of time. And he made some really good points. And then just from there, that was about a couple years ago, and just all downhill until finally the day came when it was just, that's it. Born again atheist, I don't know, is that a term?
Well, born right the first time.
Born right the first time. I don't know.
Well, it sounds like you sort of worked to try to convince yourself for a number of years.
I did, because I knew I wouldn't believe in anything real. I mean, I didn't know, because I hadn't been told anything different. And maybe if I'd come across some atheists a little sooner, while I'm going through all these arguments and debates, I'd never put myself in a position to be talking to anybody that was atheistic, going to a university that was religious and being a religionist and just never hanging around anybody that did anything cool. Who am I going to talk to? So when it finally came down to it, there's nothing there. There's nothing to believe in, so it's easy not to believe in it and to say that people that do aren't thinking about it enough.
Well, the scary thing is I kind of figured out I didn't believe somewhere in sophomore year of high school, and there was no event. It was just, kind of become aware of it at some point, that I don't, and I'm starting to argue with the kids who do believe, I never got harassed much because I was a pretty nasty debater. But it's sort of scary to me that if I had been in a family that was fundamentalist religion, my family was Episcopal and kind of quit going to church, and so I didn't get a lot of strong indoctrination. I know my personality is conservative enough that I often wonder if I had grown up in a devout Assemblies of God Conservative Church of Christ in one of those, I would have ended up, just because of that conservative mind bent that I have, believing it and going ahead and doing that for the rest of my life, because that's, because you cling to what you first start with and you don't go beyond that. That's kind of a scary thought. How would you all feel about the possibility that maybe, let's see, the next thing that'll be in your lives, it'll be a major crisis on this, is you're dating people who believe, and you're in love, and you want to have a relationship with someone who believes, and you're going to get, then your family's pressure to be married in a church and be religious, and their family's pressure, and that kind of, how does that sort of challenge strike you all?
That's scary, because I don't really like to compromise. I hate to sound selfish, but As a woman, I've seen too many women get treaded on, and I've seen too many women compromise their true beliefs or their true convictions for just to please a man or just to have a man or just to be with someone, period. And so I've always told myself I'd rather be by myself and know that I'm not selling out just so that everyone can say, oh, she's doing the right thing, and I'm living life as I think I should. So I just hope I wouldn't be in that situation.
Oh, we all know love strikes us oddly at times. Jason, how's that thought hit you?
It's funny. 2.5 years I was with someone, and for a majority of that time, religion that was the norm, and that was the thought on that end. And then through the course of the relationship, I became atheistic.
Yeah.
So it just, the thing kind of ended. It wasn't something that she believed in, and I wasn't good enough to convince her outright the other way. And I don't think that I'm going to be able to do that. Maybe you can. I don't know if there's a nice way to go about it, but if you start out completely atheistic, and then it just depends on how you work with somebody. The same Professor Matthew Dottie I told you about, he was married to a religion, a woman that was Christian. So it can happen. You just got to see beyond what they've bought into, see beyond what they've been raised to believe. And I don't know if you really wanted to convert them, you might be successful, you might not. But then again, who knows how it goes? I don't know.
Yeah, well, that's a tough one because, you all are kind of in a fortunate position, really, to realize where you stand, philosophically and ideologically on this, before you're married, and you're young, and before you've gone through, finding, somebody you may want to live with and raise children with. And an awful lot of people end up, getting married, atheist or not, and not quite thinking about the impact of that on our lives. I ended up getting married in a church, and I was an atheist, and I just, I didn't, that was what she wanted to do. So, you do that. Fortunately, she wasn't terribly religious and didn't drag my children to church a lot. So it kind of turned out okay. But I felt. Like you said, I felt stupid and silly later that I had gone ahead and done this without really considering my thoughts or where I stood or what the future impact would be, and other than kind of superficially, we're in love with this'll all work out, well, and sure enough, 15 and a half years later we got divorced. That wasn't the reason, but
didn't work out.
I certainly felt like I was foolish for not kind of understanding, the whole, all the implications of that, before I got married.
There will not be there won't be a church ceremony in my future. I don't think. Certainly not praising God or this or that or the other. It's going to have to be something. She wants a big ceremony. It's going to have to be kind of toned down. But I know that's what we have to. That's what we have to do sometimes. We got to go with what they want.
Well, you all are fortunate that there are more and more people in Texas, not many, who are licensed to perform marriages who are not religious. They're mostly humanists in Texas, but and some other groups are getting some people that can do that. The North Texas Church of Freethought, all four of their founding directors perform marriages. They've had 3 up there now.
Oh, nice.
So there's options for you all where you can just have a completely non-theistic one if that happens to
Las Vegas is one of them, I think. Could probably find a couple atheist temples there.
Well, just as an advice of an older person, you'll find that the wedding ceremony is not for you, it's for the family. To make them think you're married. And that's, you realize that about halfway through realizing, that you're not the whole point of it. Well, I've really enjoyed talking with you all, and I hope that maybe some young people that see the show or flip by will be given an opportunity to realize that they have the power of choice in this, and they don't necessarily have to go along with what makes them feel uncomfortable or conform just because it's peer pressure. My wrap-up signal here. I've been talking with Jason Alexander and Layla Zamora from San Antonio College and Freethinkers Association of Central Texas. We've enjoyed having you. Hope you all are back with us later.
I think as I please, and this gives me pleasure.
My conscience decrees, this right I must treasure.
My thoughts will not cater
To duke or dictator, no person can deny. Die Gedanken sind frei, no person can deny. Die Gedanken